This is from Bob Nightingale. The White Sox, as you said, have openly told teams Garrett Crochet is available and expect to trade him by the end of the winter meetings, which is only about a month from now.
Make it happen.
With the Philadelphia Phillies and the Dodgers the most aggressive. From Bob Nightingale last night. This makes a lot of sense. Garrett Crochet is a guy they kicked the tires on at the deadline. They wanted too much for him. They bowed out of it. All the writing from Jim Salisbury to Matt Gelb to Todd Zalecki to Alex Coffey to everybody on the beat was like, it didn't happen, not for lack of trying. Expect this is something they revisit in the offseason. And they're going to revisit it because Garrett Crochet has 2 years left of arbitration control.
Mm-hmm.
He's due expected 2.9 this year is the estimate. Much cheaper than the, let me check, Ranger Suarez, 2025 cash, 11.3. So it's a significant financial savings if that is the move that's going to happen. The White Sox did say they want position players, so this might not be a Ranger for Crochet swap.
Yeah.
It could be an Alec Boehm and Brandon Marsh and some prospects for maybe a Luis Robert and a Garrett Crochet type of move. Luis Robert, I think, is at a great point for buy low.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy going into last baseball season. You're like, wow, this kid could be a stalwart of center field all-stars for a long time to come. 30-plus home runs. A pretty exciting player. Had a pretty bad year. You could be buying low there. Garrett Crochet is cheap, younger, and probably better than Ranger Suarez, or at least has better stuff. Ranger Suarez's biggest plus is that he's got a double order of onions every October, and that's not something easy to quit or to move on from. But if you're trying to free up money on a landlocked kind of payroll, you have to get creative, and this would be a creative way to save about $8.5 to $9 million if you were to essentially swap Crochet for Ranger. So I think from the smell test, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I do buy this one as very real, and we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. But I think this is the first breadcrumb. The more and more I read, and the more I just kind of talk to people, I think a lot of change is coming.
I hope so.
So what are you upset about? Nothing has started
My
yet.
hope versus what actually will happen are two different things. Again, I live in the reality of that Philly sports will let us down any chance they can. And so I'm going to set myself up for a low bar of expectation. And if they surprise me, they surprise me. And when you hear I'd rather than do that than get my hopes up and we go out after this offseason and there's nobody that they've added outside from one or two small pieces.
I've already been hurt in my life.
I'm tired of getting hurt by our teams here.
I'm ready to be hurt again. Set the bar high.
Here's what we need to know for anybody that's forgotten all the greatness that is Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert Jr., future Phillies. Okay. So for Crochet, he is projected to sign a 6-year, $160 million deal when his free agency hits after the 2026 season. There is club control. He has proven that he can be a starter. And for Crochet, he is someone that Bob Nightingale has reported is one of the most sought after players across the market right now and at the GM meetings. Love that for the Phillies. We saw him strike out 209 batters in 146 innings and earned only $800,000 last season. For Crochet, at 25 years old, the talent that he brings, and also the fact that that was just his first year as a starter with the White Sox. We know that the White Sox have been obviously struggling, to say the least. And for them to have an offense that was, well, their team was the worst across the league, but offensively, to be so bad, they're absolutely looking for positional players. And that's why when you hear the reports coming out from them, as Chris Getz is saying, they're open to anything that makes sense. The right players have to be there. He's saying we're focusing on those position players' return. We can't force anything. That is clear. But they are actively focusing on the market. So when a Luis Robert Jr. gets added into the conversation, which makes for a great haul, you have Luis Robert, who just came off, as you mentioned, the injuries were there for him this past season.
And you're just playing on a loser organization.
100 games this past season. He batted .224 with 14 homers, 35 RBIs, 23 stolen bases, a .657 OPS, and a 1.4 WAR. So his stock has dropped because of the injury he picked up in April that had him out until early July or early June, excuse me. So he was dealing with a right hip flexor strain. And last year, Luis Robert was going to cost you a lot. But this year, they're
cheaper.
essentially looking to get rid of him and move on from him. And that's something Getz has alluded to. They need to get younger. They need to get more. They just need players. They're awful. They're the worst team in baseball. They need players. And
yeah,
so
and then $8.5, $9 million you save with Crochet and Suarez,
Correct.
you can apply that right to Luis Robert, who's a team-friendly number. So
I think it.
I think a lot of this makes sense. If you go by the Eno Saris model of pitching stuff, Ranger Suarez comes out to a 83 stuff plus, where Garrett Crochet comes out to a 109 stuff plus. So the only reason I can't just straight out say Garrett Crochet is absolutely better, he did have Tommy John surgery young in his career, so that has affected kind of his workload numbers up to this point. The stuff is clearly better. That's a substantial difference on that model. Rangers just done it on the biggest stages in multiple roles. There's a versatility there, but I think in reading, Matt Gelb's story on Tuesday or Wednesday, naming Ranger as a possibility, seeing the financial sense it would make to become a little bit more liquid. And the big takeaway here is I don't think Ranger Suarez is in their plans to extend. I think the Christopher Sanchez extension, when we did the emergency podcast earlier this year, I remember my first thought was, what does this mean for Ranger?
Bingo.
And they extended Sanchez first. So I think all the writing on the wall is telling you that Ranger Suarez is not going to be extended by the Phillies. So then it becomes, all right, how do I get value for him with a year remaining? And I think all this passes every kind of like diagnostic, check you put it through. I think this one makes a lot of sense.
It does make sense. And that's the thing.
Whether or not Robert is included with it or not, and it could be Bohm for Crochet, it could be Marsh and Prospect. I think there's a couple. It depends how it's packaged and what you do with it, but it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty is there's options that you have as well. And so if you hear that the White Sox are open and moving and they have pieces there, they have guys. I mean, you're as a team, you're looking at a White Sox team that they are a couple years removed. So it does make sense for them to get those younger players, some prospects to bring in to build for 2026, 2027. Whereas for the Phillies, which is where my frustrations come in, they need to build now. They need to add for now. And you have a player like Crochet and Robert who are sitting over there with the worst team in baseball in every statistical possible category. Bring them out of there. Give them a new opportunity.